Most people think of calisthenics like this. Last week I hit 8 reps, this week I hit 9 reps, and the week after that I'm gonna try to hit 10. This works for a little bit, but then at some point suddenly your reps stop going up for weeks, maybe even they go down. So in this video, I'll show you why chasing reps actually hinders your progress and how to measure your progress in a way that works long-term, especially for planche, front lever, and handstand push-ups, so on. If you're new here, I'm Simon, I'm the founder of OKIRU, and I help my clients get from absolute zero to skills and beyond without spending 2 hours on workouts every single day or a million exercises. In the way I coach, reps are not your primary focus. Instead, it is form and it is intensity. Once you understand this, you'll most likely never hit a plateau again, at least in the way that you see it now. Let's start with the basic problem. Your strength and your neuroadaptation are two different concepts. When you're a beginner, you're tracking progress probably something like this. And I know it because I was doing this as well. So it was 8, 8, 7, and then next week I would try to do 8, 8, 8, and then the week after that I would try to do 9, 8, 8. So on paper, you're progressing. You know, it sounds like progressive overload. So it sounds, and the paper shows you that you're getting stronger. But in reality, what's happening most of the time when you're able to add a new rep every single session, it simply means your nervous system is adapting to the movement. Your body is learning how to utilize the strength that it already has. You have to keep in mind that strength comes in slower than your nervous system adapts. And here's the thing, this is not only for beginners. If you're training, for example, pike push-ups and you move to handstand push-ups, you'll most likely realize that at first getting the handstand push-up is a little bit hard. But then once you get used to the movement, suddenly you get like +2 reps, +3 reps every single week. Until you get to, for example, 5 handstand push-ups and suddenly you get stuck. You're stuck on 5 handstand push-ups for 3 weeks and your reps sometimes are even going down. And why that is because your nervous system finally adapted to this new movement. It's already doing it as efficiently as it can, or can at the moment, and now you truly see how slowly your strength is increasing. So in that case, let's talk about what to do when you're stuck on, let's say, 5, 5, 5. Here's the idea. With bodyweight training, form is intensity. It's not like in the gym where you can simply do any exercise that you want with perfect form, and then over time you simply slap on 2.5 kg and you're progressing every single week. In calisthenics, you just cannot do a new progression with perfect form right away because it is most likely way more intense than the previous movement. So you have to start working with your body angle, with how much pressure you put on your main movers, with your form, with your elevation, with your grip, with your control. And every single time you've adjusted one of these concepts, you are making the exercise more difficult. If I'm doing a pike push-ups and I'm doing it slightly deeper, it's already harder than the last time. As another example, you can do pike push-ups with weight split 50-50 between your hands and your feet. And over time, you might be still stuck on, let's say, 5 reps, but now you're doing 80% body weight on your shoulders and only 20% on your feet. Now you can see the difference between these two movements despite the reps being exactly the same, being that the second movement is way more intense. So rather than thinking of whether I managed to do more reps than the last session, start thinking of, did I make the exercise more difficult than the last time? Or is the exercise becoming easier for me? And this increasing the intensity becomes your new metric. To make this next point make sense, I want you to realize that if I ask you, or ask beginners, someone who's been training for 3 months, to do a single handstand push-up, it's most likely going to be very, very intense and very difficult. But if I tell the same person to do 1,000 wall push-ups or knee push-ups, it's going to be also very difficult. But the difficulty lies in two different things. In the first example, it is intensity. It is that one single rep, that one single exercise is simply too intense for the person. But in the second, the intensity is very, very low, but the endurance factor makes it way harder. So despite both exercises being as difficult, the first exercise is simply very high in intensity. That movement is still maybe too difficult for this person. But in the second example, the person can already do the exercise in their sleep, most likely. So repping out this exercise is not intense. It's the endurance factor that makes it harder. So for this same person, doing these both exercises can be the same painstaking experience. Both might be very difficult. But the second is way more about endurance and not at all intensity. So here's the new metric. The new metric is RPE, which means rate of perceived exertion. Keep in mind that RPE is a slightly different concept and I'm aware of it, taking it out of context a little bit, but this is the most similar scale to our goal. For this purpose, you can use as a scale from 1 to 10 of the intensity of a single repetition. By doing so, you start thinking of reps and sets as irrelevant. Those become simply product of your high intensity training. If you're stuck on 6 reps and the RPE is 7, and after a few weeks, you're still stuck on the 6 reps, but now the RPE is 5, that means you progress strength-wise, and the problem is endurance. This may sound foreign to you, but as I give you this example, you'll finally understand it, because this is what happens for the most part in pull-ups. People who learn pull-ups gain, let's say, 6 reps very, very easily, usually, relatively, but everything above that sometimes becomes incredibly difficult. You stop being able to progress very fast, and around that 10 reps, it's very hard to start gaining more and more reps, unless unless you start training in an endurance way. And so it's fully possible that you are able to rep out, for example, 3 high pull-ups all the way to your waist, but you are not able to do 15 pull-ups in a row. Now, if endurance isn't your goal, then you spending time on getting from 10 to 15 pull-ups misses the point. It becomes a waste of time because your goal is to get stronger in pull. It's not necessarily to rep out as many pull-ups as I can, but simply make each pull-up harder. So how do you do that? You add weight, you make it more explosive, you control it more, you add dead stops. Whatever it is that makes the exercise more difficult will bring you more strength gains than if you tried to get more and more reps. So always focus on RPE, focus on how difficult the reps are, and you'll never be stuck again. Alright, so for example, if you're stuck on pec push-ups, rather than trying to add more and more reps, what you should focus on is simply shifting more weights onto your shoulder. Even if it ends up being only 2 repetitions, it's already better than the last week where you did, for example, 6 reps, because those 2 reps were more difficult. And in this scenario, if you simply just add a few more reps of the previous form right after those first 2, then you already did a way more intense and difficult set, and so you're progressing. Now, over time, as you train, your pike push-ups will be, for example, 90% of the pressure in your shoulders and only 10 in the feet. Your form is perfect. Now, that is the point where you move on to the next exercise. You basically made the RPE of the perfect form of that exercise too low, and now to actually increase the RPE, you are forced to go for the next progression. So keep this in mind. You're not trying to hit a magical number that will unlock a next progression. You're trying to constantly push for that intensity. You're trying to up the RPE and then adapt to it so that the RPE drops, and then you make it harder. So you keep going for the higher RPE. Now, I'll show you my own example from my own training and how I use this whole theory to my own training and see the progress. So 3 weeks ago, I couldn't do a single good front lever pull-ups. I could rep out some with stretch reflex, without elbow lockout, without dead stop, with kipping with my hips, right? So I was training that bad form because the RPE on those were already pretty high until I could rep it out for, let's say, 3-4 repetitions. Now at that point, my first reps became quite easy. So what I do is I simply apply some form cues to make the exercise a little bit cleaner. And form is intensity, therefore the intensity or the RPE of the exercise becomes higher. So for example, the week after that, what I started working on is I stop using the stretch reflex. I try to go into a dead stop before I start the pull-ups. Now the intensity of this exercise gets way higher. It becomes way harder to pause before you start pull as opposed to using the stretch reflex to pull. So the progress is happening despite my numbers going down or my numbers staying the same. All I have to do now is to keep training it until I can consistently get into this no stretch reflex pull-up, familiarize myself with it until its RPE goes down. As soon as it goes down a little bit, I add in another form cue, which is to stop kipping with my hips. As you know, any exercise without the kip becomes way harder than when you're kipping. So the intensity goes back up again. I'm increasing the RPE. Following the same logic, I managed to do it in my first, for example, repetition, and I add in some bad form volume right after that. So for example, I add in 2 or 3 more ugly repetitions, just because the ugly reps are not regression, they're simply what I used to do, right? So if I manage to replace 1 by 1 rep into a more perfect form, then I'm progressing. And as the final step, what I did was I focused on looking at my elbow fully because it makes the exercise more intense. And at this point, I have combined all these cues that I've been practicing, and I managed to do single, like perfect front lever pull-up. And you can see that this whole process is simply gathering the slightest form cues that make the exercise more intense, and thus I'm making the exercise more intense every single session, slowly, and adapting to it, and therefore unlocking the skill. You see, it's not about trying to get 10 ugly front lever pull-ups and hoping that a magical number like 10 will transition me right away into a single perfect pull-up. It's a constant attempt to increase my RPE or keep the RPE stable at, for example, 8, and every time it starts dropping because my body is adapting to the movement, I simply up the difficulty, up the intensity by introducing a small form cue. So you see, it is all about maintaining the RPE at around 8, and this every single time it starts dropping, I bring it back to a higher RPE with form cues. I make the exercise more difficult, more intense with these form cues, and therefore I'm progressing. Now, there are times where you actually stop thinking about intensity and you focus purely on volume, but this would be a topic for another video. So if you would like to see it, let me know in the comments. Now, if you're listening to this and you're thinking, I have no clue how to apply this to my planche, to my front lever, to my handstand push-ups, then that's literally what I do in my one-on-one coaching. If you're thinking, okay, that's some really valuable information, well, that's exactly what I teach my clients. My goal is obviously to help you gain skills skills, get stronger, but at the same time, it is to educate you. My goal is for me to be your last coach ever, because I will teach you everything about structure, about training methods, about progression, about skills, whatever it is that will make you an independent athlete. So stop waiting, click the link below and book a call with me. Now, alternatively, you can also join my OKIRU community for free. We're hitting close to 500 members, and actually for that occasion, I'm doing a giveaway where I'm giving away 2 months of free one-on-one coaching. And so I promise, finally, I invested in lights. I have one here, one here, one here, and I hope that this video quality is better and to your liking. So, if you appreciate the effort, just drop a like, subscribe, comment something, and yeah, I'll see you in the next one.